Hey there. Welcome to Midnight Sleep Crime. I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep, so before you get too cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. A remodeling crew in Michigan was tearing up a 19th century farmhouse floor when they found a trapdoor. What was inside led to a statewide investigation, 5 exhumations, and the unmasking of a killer who had hidden in plain sight for over 40 years. In 2023, contractor Luis Romero and his crew begin renovations on an old farmhouse outside Kalamazoo. While removing the rotted living room floor, they discover a hidden trapdoor sealed shut with bolts and concrete. Inside is a narrow staircase that leads to a fully preserved 1970s children's bedroom, untouched, with toys, posters, and a bed still made. At first, the room seems like an eerie historical oddity, until they find human teeth in a jewelry box on the dresser. The case quickly unravels decades of secrets tied to the house's original owners, the Harlan family. The youngest daughter, Rosie Harlan, had gone missing in 1981 at the age of 9, but police had no evidence, and the family claimed she'd run away. Over the years, multiple foster children placed in the home also disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances, yet the case files were scattered and never connected. The discovery leads to a massive forensic effort that uncovers 5 victims. But the biggest shock comes when a now elderly man, a retired police detective who originally cleared the Harlans, is exposed as being part of the cover-up. His connection to the Harlans runs deeper than anyone imagined. The twist? The preserved bedroom was never meant to be found. It was built as a memorial by someone with a conscience, someone who left behind a final letter explaining everything. Kalamazoo, Michigan, May 3rd, 2023. Luis Romero wasn't one for superstition. He'd torn up enough old floors and walls over the years to know that sometimes creaking noises and cold spots were just bad insulation and worse plumbing. But this house felt different. The job was simple enough. Restore a dilapidated 1880s farmhouse for a young couple planning to turn it into a countryside Airbnb. The property had been vacant for decades, passed down through inheritance, rarely touched. A minor fixer-upper, they said, until Romero's crew pulled up the floorboards in the main room. It was Luis's apprentice, Kenny, who first found the edge of it, a steel-reinforced trapdoor, completely sealed with old cement and rusted bolts. "Hey, boss," Kenny called, tapping his crowbar against the edge. "You see this?" Luis knelt down, running his hand across the surface. It was flush with the joists, expertly disguised. He followed the bolts with his eyes. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure this door stayed shut. "Get the grinder," Luis muttered. "We're opening it." The trapdoor. The air changed the moment they cracked the seal. A musty, cold draft crept out from below. Kenny leaned in with a flashlight and frowned. "It's stairs," he said. "Leads down. But it's weird. Looks like finished walls." The hole opened into a narrow stairwell, perfectly preserved. As they descended, it felt less like a basement and more like a capsule from another time. At the bottom was a small door with floral wallpaper peeling at the edges. Behind it, a room no larger than 10 by 10 feet. A pink bed with ruffled sheets sat perfectly made. A small dresser, toy chest, and bookshelf lined the walls. Movie posters from the 1970s, The Rescuers, Star Wars, Pete's Dragon, were pinned up like someone had just been there. Dust lay everywhere, but nothing had been disturbed. A dollhouse sat open on the floor. On the nightstand, a Mickey Mouse lamp flickered when Luis tried the switch. This doesn't make sense," Kenny whispered. Luis opened the closet. Inside were a row of tiny dresses, all neatly hung, and a shoebox. He opened it. Inside, nestled among yellowed hair ribbons and paper dolls, were 6 human teeth. The police were called immediately. Within hours, the farmhouse was roped off, and the county coroner arrived with 2 forensic techs. Detective Ellen Glass of the Kalamazoo Sheriff's Department took the lead. The first thing she noticed? The room wasn't built with the rest of the house. The walls were newer, the construction modern. It had been created within the house and expertly hidden. "What we have," she said during the initial press briefing, "is a crime scene that may date back over 4 decades. We believe this was a concealed living space, and there is strong indication that a child lived here for some time." But what shocked her most wasn't the room. It was the house's history. The property had belonged to the Harlan family until 1997, when the last surviving member, Anne Harlan, was placed in hospice care. The Harlans had 4 children, but only 3 remained in the public record after 1981. The youngest, Rosie Harlan, had been listed as a runaway at age 9. The official report was thin. No signs of foul play, no autopsy, no evidence. But now, a child's room was buried beneath the house, one that no one had known existed. A room designed to be locked, forgotten. The survivor. 3 days later, the story broke statewide. Images of the hidden room appeared across news channels, the headline reading, "Secret Child's Room Found Beneath 19th Century Farmhouse in Kalamazoo." That's when the phone call came. Detective Glass picked up on the 3rd ring. "This is Ellen," she said. The voice on the other end was shaky, elderly, a man. "I know that house," he said. "I lived next door until 84. My name is Martin Blanchard. I remember Rosie." Ellen's ears perked up. "You were neighbors with the Harlans?" "Yeah," he said. "And I remember things. Screaming, mostly. And once she threw a note over the fence. I was just a teenager. I didn't do anything." "What did the note say?" There was silence for a moment. She wrote, "I'm not allowed to leave, but I'm still here. Please tell someone. My name is Rosie." A pattern emerges. The cold case unit began a full reinvestigation of Rosie's disappearance. While combing through the original police files, Detective Glass found inconsistencies, officers' notes missing, evidence never processed, and one name stood out. Detective Charles Lenning, the lead investigator at the time, had signed off on Rosie's case within 48 hours, an unusually short window for a child disappearance. He had since retired, now living 2 counties over. Glass made contact. "What do you remember about Rosie Harlan?" she asked. "Runaway," Lenning said flatly. "No sign of abduction. Parents said she'd been troubled. Case was closed. No foul play." "You didn't find it odd that a 9-year-old could disappear without a trace?" "I followed protocol. If you're calling me 40 years later, then maybe your department's got time to waste. I don't." Click. Something wasn't right. The dollhouse back at the scene, forensic teams began inventorying the room. Beneath the bed was a crawl space sealed with plywood. Inside, they discovered a small metal lockbox. Inside the lockbox was a set of photographs, Polaroids, curled at the edges, showing a young girl with red hair in various poses. Some showed her smiling, others crying. But the final photo chilled the entire team. It was of Rosie standing beside the dollhouse, holding up a sign written in crayon, "This is not my home." On the roof of the dollhouse, forensic techs noticed something strange. Carved into the shingles with a blade were 7 sets of initials. Only one matched someone they knew. R.H., Rosie Harlan. The rest? Unknown. The room had become a forensic goldmine and a nightmare. Detective Ellen Glass stared at the dollhouse on the evidence table. Each carved set of initials was cataloged and magnified. 7 sets. One belonged to Rosie Harlan. The others? No mention of them in any Harlan family records. Glass felt a pit form in her stomach. Assume the worst, she muttered. 7 sets of initials. 7 kids. Desai nodded grimly. If we're lucky, initials alone won't be all we have for long. Digging the records, Detective Glass requested all missing persons reports for children under 12 between 1975 and 1985 in Kalamazoo County and surrounding areas. The list was longer than she expected, and many had gone cold with only vague leads. She assigned her team to begin cross-referencing the initials with these files. The first match came quick. TL, Timothy Lasker, age 10, disappeared while walking to school in 1979. AW, Angela White, 8, vanished from a grocery store parking lot in 1980. MC, Maya Carter, 6, last seen leaving a church daycare in 1982. Each case had one bizarre similarity. Initial interviews with the Harlan family were conducted, but not followed up. The Harlans always seemed to have just seen the child nearby, or claimed they knew nothing. None were arrested. None were searched. But the Harlans were in the background of everything. The family. The Harlan family patriarch, Walter Harlan, had died in 1992, the same year the house was first abandoned. He was a church deacon, local handyman, and often hosted Sunday dinners for neighbors. His wife, Ann Harlan, had died in hospice just 3 years earlier. Photos from their home showed the couple with their children, Gregory, Sarah, Michael, and Rosie. Rosie had been the youngest by nearly 10 years. Interviews with surviving community members painted a curious portrait. The Harlans were respected, helpful, and devout. But those who knew them well, or dared to question them, spoke of secrets, strictness, and an unsettling devotion to privacy. They always locked their basement, one former neighbor said. Always. Not just a latch. Heavy chains. Like they were hiding something alive. A pattern. Hidden in plain sight glass widened the search. She pulled property records for the Harlan family's business dealings and discovered Walter had purchased 3 adjacent parcels of land in the early 1980s. 2 had been sold, but 1 remained untouched and wooded. 10 acres of thick Michigan forest. She obtained a warrant and headed out with cadaver dogs. On the 3rd day, they found the first shallow grave, then a second, then a third. Each grave contained the remains of a child. Dental records confirmed what Glass already feared. Timothy Lasker, Angela White, and Maya Carter had all been buried there. Their disappearances, once scattered and forgotten, were now fully connected, bound together by the Harlan name. The 5th victim. Meanwhile, forensic techs made a discovery inside the secret room's toy chest. Hidden beneath a false bottom was a strip of 35mm film. After careful development, it revealed 8 still photographs. Each one showed a child sitting in the same chair in the same room. One girl, seated in the 4th photo, wore a shirt with Camp Elmwood, 1978, printed across it. Glass found the camp still operating and contacted their historical office. That girl was Emily Stanton, reported missing in 1978 during a family trip. Her case had gone cold, ruled as likely abduction by a stranger off the highway. No suspects, no leads, until now. Emily's initials matched one on the dollhouse. ES, the body count was now 5. The whistleblower. Then, a miracle. Detective Glass received an anonymous envelope in her mailbox at the station. No return address. Inside was a letter and a photo. A Polaroid of the dollhouse, taken clearly in the 1980s. Pinned to it was a note, handwritten in block letters. They never let her out. She begged. I couldn't stop it, but I made her a room so she could feel safe. There are more. Look under the floor. The truth is deeper than you know. Glass's hands trembled. There was a faint signature at the bottom. S. A visit to Gregory Harlan. Gregory Harlan, the eldest son, was now 63 and lived in a remote cabin 2 hours north of Detroit. Glass and 2 officers arrived unannounced. He answered the door with a tired expression, long gray hair pulled back, eyes dull. "You're here about Rosie," he said quietly, almost like it was a relief. Glass raised an eyebrow. "We're here about all of them." Gregory let out a long sigh and stepped aside. "Then I guess it's time." Inside, his walls were covered in childlike drawings. Rosie's face appeared repeatedly, drawn over and over in various stages of life. A 9-year-old, a teenager, even a woman in her 20s. "She never left that room," he said softly. "She cried every night. She sang lullabies to herself. I made her the dollhouse. I brought her food when they forgot. But I wasn't strong enough to stop it." Glass pressed. "Who kept her there?" He stared out the window. "All of them, but mostly Sarah. She said Rosie was too wild, said she had to be tamed." One final clue. Gregory said something else before being taken into custody. She wasn't the last. There was another, a boy. He didn't live in the room. He died before they built it. The floor, the one Rosie slept on, that's where they put him. Detectives returned to the farmhouse and removed the planks beneath the bed. Ground-penetrating radar lit up almost instantly. They began to dig, and what they found would change the direction of the entire case. The ground beneath the bed had always felt wrong. Luis Romero had mentioned it early on. The floorboards under Rosie's bed were thicker than the rest, layered differently. Now, with Gregory Harlan's confession and a confirmed body count rising, it was time to dig. The forensic excavation team began carefully removing soil. Within hours, they uncovered a wooden box, not a coffin, but a carpenter's chest. Inside lay the skeletal remains of a young boy, no older than 7. There were no clothes, no toys, no name. Only a small silver pendant clutched in his tiny hand. The letter D etched into it. Who was D? Detective Glass sent the pendant to be analyzed while forensics worked on estimating time of death. The chest itself dated back to the 1950s, older than Rosie, older than even the Harlan children. The boy was different from the other victims. His remains showed signs of malnutrition and prolonged physical abuse. Several bones had been broken and healed improperly, and there was evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. Someone had not just hidden this child, they had erased him. And yet, Gregory Harlan had known about him. Glass returned to the jail for another interview. Gregory's truth. Gregory sat with a numb expression, hands folded on the cold steel table. When Glass showed him a photo of the pendant, his lip quivered slightly. "His name was David," he said quietly. "He was our cousin, sort of. He came to live with us in 1971, I think. I was 9. Rosie wasn't even born yet." "Why was he there?" Glass asked. Gregory paused. "No one ever said. One day he was just in the attic. Mom said he was special and couldn't go to school. Dad said the state didn't need to know, so he lived with us, but he wasn't allowed to speak unless spoken to." He looked down at his hands. "I think my parents were paid to keep him. A hush job, foster system loophole or something. But they never filed paperwork. He wasn't on any records. Sarah used to call him the ghost in the walls." "What happened to him?" Glass pressed. Gregory didn't look up. "Sarah said he saw something he wasn't supposed to. Maybe something Dad did. One day she told me David ran away. But I knew. I heard the hammer. I heard him scream." State records and a missing name Glass requested state foster care and orphanage records from the late 1960s to early 1970s. Several files were missing. One in particular stood out, a child identified only as Infant DJ, placed into temporary care in 1966 after his parents died in a house fire. No adoption paperwork, no foster family placement. The last entry listed a caseworker, Howard Ellison, now long deceased, DJ, the initials carved into the dollhouse roof. Glass sat back in her chair, realizing what it meant. The dollhouse wasn't just a memorial, it was a roll call, and David, the earliest victim, had been buried beneath it, while others were imprisoned inside it. The family web, it became clear. The Harlans had operated more like a cult than a family. Walter Harlan ruled with an iron fist, and Anne backed every decision. Sarah, the oldest daughter, had become the enforcer, cold, calculating, cruel. Michael was mostly absent from records, having died in a car accident in 1991. Gregory had been the only one to show remorse. With David's discovery, the body count rose to 6, but one set of initials on the dollhouse still had no match. L.B. Glass believed that L.B. was someone recent, someone closer in age to Rosie, or even after, someone they hadn't uncovered yet. She requested forensic scans of the entire house. The walls have secrets. While scanning the upstairs hallway, one tech noticed something odd behind a stretch of wall near what would have been the children's bedrooms. The wall, constructed in 1985 renovations, had hollow space, but no reason for it to exist. No crawl space, no plumbing. A demolition crew opened the wall carefully. What they found inside shocked everyone. A second, smaller hidden room. This one sealed from the inside with rusted hinges and nails. No windows, no doors. Inside was a child's mattress, blankets, a rusted chamber pot, a makeshift vent punched through the ceiling into the attic, and carved into the wall, over and over again, were 3 letters. LB, 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 but no body, no bones, only a name, scratched faintly under a painted section of wall. Lily. Help me, please. A race against time. This changed everything. Glass knew now there might be a 7th victim who wasn't dead, or at least wasn't confirmed. If Lily was kept in that room, and if there were no remains, it meant she may have been released, or escaped. The timeline was unclear, but the discovery forced the department to issue a statewide search for anyone matching. Female estimated age 40 to 45. Possibly named Lily B. or Lily Harlan, lived in or around Kalamazoo between 1980 to 1990. No official birth records. Foster systems, school rosters, even hospital admittances were cross-referenced. One name finally surfaced. Lily Beck, born 1981, was taken in as a ward of the state after being found wandering the woods near Allegan in 1992. No memory of her past. She had been placed in long-term care after being diagnosed with trauma-induced amnesia. She now lived in a group home in Traverse City. Glass left that night. Face to face, Lily Beck sat quietly in the garden of her residential facility, her eyes following a butterfly with childlike wonder. Detective Glass approached slowly, unsure of how much Lily understood. The staff had warned her. Lily had limited verbal ability, though her mind was sharp in unexpected ways. Lily, Glass said gently, showing her a photo of the dollhouse. Do you remember this? Lily's eyes locked onto it. She reached out and gently tapped the tiny roof, right where her initials had been carved. She began to hum, softly, a tune faint and broken. Glass froze. It was the same lullaby Rosie had been recorded singing on one of the tapes. Lily looked up at her, and for the first time, spoke a full sentence. Rosie was my sister. Detective Ellen Glass sat across from Lily Beck in a quiet room of the residential facility. The moment Lily said Rosie was my sister, the entire investigation took a dramatic shift. For months, Rosie had been the tragic centerpiece of a cold case turned serial investigation. But now, a survivor had emerged. Someone who had lived inside the walls, who had breathed the same damp, secret air as Rosie. And she wasn't just a victim, she was family. Glass steadied her voice. Lily, can you tell me about Rosie? Lily's eyes shifted toward the window, where the light filtered through trees. She hummed the lullaby again. Then she whispered, "She braided my hair. We made stories in the dark." That was all she said, but it was enough. Confirmation. Back in Kalamazoo, DNA tests were fast-tracked. A hair strand from Lily was compared to samples recovered from Rosie's belongings. Within 48 hours, the results came back. 99.94% sibling match. Lily Beck was Lily Harlan, the final unconfirmed child from the dollhouse roof carvings. Born in 1981, just 2 years before Rosie disappeared. But something didn't fit. Lily was born after Rosie was hidden away in the room. Glass consulted with child psychologists and legal historians. It became clear Rosie may have been imprisoned first, but Lily had been born into that horror, raised within captivity. Her entire childhood spent inside walls, hidden from the world. She didn't disappear. She simply never existed on paper. That made her survival all the more remarkable. Into the attic. With Lily's memory still fragile, Glass returned to the farmhouse. This time, she focused on the attic. Gregory had mentioned David being kept there before Rosie. If Lily had also been hidden, there had to be some record, something tangible. Behind a false panel, they found it. A narrow shelf built between the joists, filled with spiral notebooks. Nearly 20 of them, written in a cramped, obsessive scrawl. The initials R.H., Rosie Harlan, were on the inside of each front cover. The notebooks were diaries, pages and pages of entries written in isolation. Lily's hair is soft. She asked why we don't go outside. I told her this is where we live. She cried. I sang to her. Sarah says I'm too loud. I think she hurt Lily. I saw bruises. I'll hide her when I can. We heard a dog barking. I pressed Lily's hand to the vent so she'd feel it. I told her the world is real. She didn't believe me. The entries ended abruptly in 1991. Glass could hardly breathe as she flipped through them. They didn't just confirm the abuse. They confirmed intent, calculation, generational cruelty. Rosie had been mothering Lily while they were both prisoners. The cover-up, everything about the case now pointed to Sarah Harlan, the enforcer, the controller, the surviving daughter who had somehow evaded the spotlight during the family's disintegration. She'd moved out of Michigan in the late 90s and changed her last name. It took 2 days to find her. She was living in Arizona under the name Sarah Lenning, married to the very same retired officer, Charles Lenning, who had dismissed Rosie's case in 1981. The connection finally came full circle. Sarah had married the cop who buried the case. The arrest Glass coordinated with Arizona authorities for a surprise visit. At 6:15 a.m., officers arrived at a small adobe house outside of Flagstaff. Sarah answered the door with bleary eyes, clutching a robe. Glass stepped forward, badge out. Sarah Harlan, she said, you're under arrest for the kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and murder of multiple children in Kalamazoo County, Michigan. Sarah didn't protest. She smiled. I was wondering when you'd come. The interrogation. In the interview room, Sarah remained disturbingly calm. She requested coffee, drank it slowly, and answered every question with an unnerving flatness. Glass leaned in. Why did you imprison Rosie? Why did you kill David? Sarah blinked. Because they were weak. They cried. They asked questions. Weakness spreads like mold. And Lily? Lily was an accident. Mom said she was a punishment, but Rosie wouldn't let her grow up right. She protected her, lied for her, loved her. I was trying to fix that. Glass narrowed her eyes. Did you kill Rosie? Sarah's lips twitched. Number Rosie died on her own. She stopped eating. She gave everything to Lily. Her strength, her body, her hope. I didn't need to kill her. She did it herself. The final tape. Back at the house, one final tape was found behind a wall panel in the hidden room. It was dated August 14th, 1991. The screen flickered to life, showing Rosie, thin, pale, her hair in braids, eyes bright despite the squalor. She looked into the camera and spoke. If you're watching this, then I didn't make it. But maybe Lily did. Maybe she found the vent, or the door, or maybe someone finally cared enough to look. Lily is strong. She deserves the sun. Please, let her have it. The screen cut to black. Closure, and not Rosie's body was never recovered. Despite excavation, sonar, and even drone-based ground scans of the entire Harlan property and nearby woods, no remains were ever found. Gregory insisted she died quietly in her bed. She held Lily's hand, he said. I buried her, beneath the trees. I just don't remember where. I was too broken. A memorial was erected on the property, 7 stones in a circle, one for each victim. One stone remained blank, carved only with the initials R.H. Lily attended the ceremony. She held a sunflower in one hand and one of Rosie's notebooks in the other. She didn't speak, but when the wind rustled the trees, she smiled. The Harlan farmhouse was scheduled for demolition. Too many bodies, too many memories, too much darkness soaked into its foundations. After multiple exhumations, arrests, and media storms, the county deemed it unsalvageable. But before the wrecking crews moved in, Detective Ellen Glass received one final request from Lily Beck. She wanted to go back, not alone and not for long, just long enough to stand in the place she once thought was the entire world. Glass arranged for a quiet, supervised visit. No cameras, no press, only Lily, 2 caseworkers, and Glass herself. Returning to the room. The door to the hidden room had been removed and stored as evidence. Now, the gaping square in the living room floor stood exposed. A narrow wooden stairwell descended into still air, heavy with mildew and memory. Lily stood at the top of the steps, trembling. Glass offered her a hand. You don't have to go down. But Lily did. She descended 1 step at a time, her knuckles white against the handrail. When she reached the room, she stopped in the doorway. Her eyes scanned the place she had once lived. The pink walls now stripped of wallpaper. The bed frame rusted, the air heavy with rot. She walked slowly to the corner near the bookshelf and knelt. With a shaking finger, she traced a faint line on the wall. L plus R equals sunlight, it read. Lily closed her eyes. She remembered. The secrets of the floor before demolition, Ellen requested one final ground scan beneath the secret room's foundation. She had a hunch. Rosie's body hadn't been found above or in the woods. But what if Gregory, scared of discovery, buried her beneath the place she loved most? A place she believed Lily might one day escape from. This time, they scanned deeper, past the false base and below the concrete piers. The radar beeped. 6 feet below the northwest corner of the hidden room, there was a cavity. The crew excavated carefully, and within 2 hours, unearthed a small wooden box wrapped in plastic. Inside were fabric remnants, a gold necklace, and skeletal remains. Dental records, matched against Rosie's childhood dental visits from 1977, confirmed the truth. Rosie Harlan had been found. The news breaks again. The media swarmed once more. Final victim of the Harlan family discovered beneath secret room blared across national headlines. News vans crowded the property for days. Everyone wanted the image. The angel of the floor, the girl who had sacrificed her life to shield her sister. Rosie's photo, red hair, gap-toothed smile, became iconic. People demanded justice, memorials, documentaries. Glass ignored them all. She wasn't interested in selling a story. She was interested in finishing it. The final charges with Rosie's remains recovered, the prosecution had its final nail. Combined with diaries, photos, forensic evidence, and Lily's testimony, even limited, the case against Sarah Harlan became airtight. She was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to cover up child abuse and deaths, accessory to murder in the deaths of David, Maya, and Rosie Charles Lenning. Her husband and former officer was charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. He pled not guilty, but after just 2 weeks in county jail, he was found dead by suicide in his cell. His final note read, "I told myself I didn't know, but I knew." Rosie's room reconstructed. In the months following the trial, a group of trauma therapists, survivors, and child advocacy workers launched a project in Rosie's honor. They called it the Hidden Room Project, a touring installation designed to replicate the room Rosie lived in, based on crime scene photos and diary entries. But with one key difference: visitors exit through a door Rosie never had, one marked with sunlight. The exhibit served 2 purposes: education, highlighting the dangers of isolation, the flaws in the child welfare system, and the importance of investigating missing children thoroughly. Memorial, honoring Rosie, David, and the others who didn't survive. Lily was present at the ribbon cutting in Kalamazoo. She stood silently as a choir of children sang Rosie's favorite song, "You Are My Sunshine." She cried, and for the first time, she didn't hide it. The house falls on a cold, overcast morning. Bulldozers arrived at the Harlan property. Lily didn't attend, but she asked Glass to bring her a piece of the door. Just a sliver. A reminder that she had lived and escaped and survived. As the first wall crumbled, a burst of dust shot upward like a spirit breaking free. The last thing to fall was the secret room's foundation, and with it, the final remnant of what had once been Rosie's prison and Lily's cradle. A new life. Lily Beck began therapy in earnest after that. With professional help, her memory slowly returned, fragment by fragment. She remembered a birthday. She remembered Rosie teaching her to read with picture books. She remembered pretending the ceiling vent was a window to the stars. But most of all, she remembered feeling loved, not by her parents, not by Sarah, but by Rosie. Fiercely, unconditionally. She began writing, first with assistance, then on her own. Her memoir, Rosie's Light, would go on to become a bestseller. She ended it with the same words Rosie spoke on the final tape. Maybe someone finally cared enough to look. Just when Detective Ellen Glass thought the case had reached its conclusion, a call came from the evidence archives. A box, misfiled, mislabeled, and nearly discarded, had been found in the basement of the county sheriff's office. It had been retrieved during the original Harlan property search, but had never been properly cataloged. Inside were 8 cassette tapes, each labeled with only a date. The earliest, February 2nd, 1983. The latest, July 9th, 1991. Glass ordered a secure playback setup in the forensic media room. The contents, she suspected, might be grim, but they could also be vital. What they revealed changed everything, again. Tape 1, Instructions. The first tape was purely audio. A man's voice, low, firm, eerily calm, spoke into the recorder. "This will serve as proof of instruction. The girl will remain downstairs until she learns. You are not to engage unless necessary. Sarah, this is your duty. You are the strong one." Glass froze. The voice belonged to Walter Harlan, the family patriarch. Rosie must be broken of her will. She speaks too much. She asks too much. If she is to be of use, she must obey. There was no remorse, no conflict, just cold doctrine. It was clear now. Rosie's imprisonment wasn't a spontaneous act of abuse. It was systematic and carefully constructed, a belief system rooted in dominance, control, and religious extremism. Tape 2, Disobedience. The next recording was from 3 months later. A scuffle, muffled cries. Then a young girl's voice, Rosie's, trying to reason. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to see the sky. Please, I'll be good." Then came a slap. A woman's voice, sharp and cold. "Sarah, you don't get to make wishes. You're a sinner. You stay here until you're fixed." The tape ended with the sound of Rosie softly singing to herself. The same lullaby. Glass clenched her fists. Every inch of this case revealed deeper evil. Tape 3. Arrival. This recording was the most disturbing so far. Footsteps echoed on wooden stairs, a baby crying. Then Sarah's voice hushed. "Shh, shh. I know, it's cold down here, but she'll take care of you. Rosie knows what to do." Then Rosie, her voice much older now, shocked. "Who is she?" "Your sister. Her name's Lily. Don't let her forget who you are." The crying continued. "Rosie, what am I supposed to do?" "Sarah, be her mother, or she dies." The tape clicked off. Tape 4. Visitors. Glass's eyes narrowed as she played the fourth tape. This one included a voice she recognized, a child welfare officer from the 1980s. Glass pulled old records and confirmed it. James Mead, who had conducted a welfare check on the Harlan property in 1986 after a neighbor's complaint about screaming. But according to the records, he had found nothing suspicious. On the tape, Walter Harlan greets him warmly. "Just the little ones today. Gregory's off at school. Rosie's visiting relatives." The man's voice was casual, distracted. There were no sounds of searching, just coffee being poured. Then Walter, barely audible, murmurs, "God watches when the world doesn't." Mead, "That he does, Mr. Harlan. That he does." The tape ends. The pattern of protection glass couldn't shake the horror. Over the years, 5 different state and county employees visited the Harlan home. All left without incident. None filed follow-up reports. Were they coerced? Or just lazy? Or worse, complicit? She launched a quiet investigation into surviving employees from that era. What she found was a network of apathy reinforced by Walter's community power and influence. A respected church leader, he held leverage through donations, local favors, even police endorsements. They had built a house of secrets, and everyone helped keep it standing. Tape 5. Escape attempt. This one hurt to listen to. Rosie's voice, panicked, panting. "She's sick. She has a fever. I need medicine. Please, I think she's dying." Then Sarah, cold and unmoved. "You'll figure it out." A pause. A thud. Then Rosie screams, "I'll get out. I'll tell them. I swear to God I will." Then silence. The tape ends. Glass could almost hear the iron door slamming shut. Tape 6. The confession. July 1991. Rosie sounds weak. Her voice is faint. Her words slow. "I don't have long. I've stopped eating. I gave Lily my soup. I couldn't keep it down anyway." She coughs. "If someone ever finds this, please don't let her grow up in here. I tried. I tried to be enough. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm sorry I couldn't be more." The tape hisses for several minutes. Then the last words, "I hope you find the sun." Tape 7. Sarah's diary. This final recording wasn't made by Rosie. It was Sarah. She had recorded herself sometime in 1992, after Rosie's death and before Lily's escape. "She's gone. I buried her with the doll. The little one doesn't understand yet. I'll break her the way I couldn't break Rosie. This time, no stories, no songs, just silence." Then she whispers something chilling. "The Lord cleanses those who are willing. The others, he discards." Glass turned the tape off. There was no remorse, no regret, only ideology. Faith twisted into a weapon, the missing 8th tape. Only 7 tapes had been reviewed, but the box was labeled 8 tapes. Glass searched the evidence locker records and found a discrepancy. The 8th tape had been logged and then removed. Signed out by a former deputy in 2005. He'd never returned it. The deputy's name? Stephen Marks. He died in 2011. But his personal belongings, boxed and stored in county archives, had never been thoroughly cataloged. Glass requested access, a glimmer of hope. Among the old boxes of uniforms and photos, she found a plastic VHS case. Inside was the final tape, unlabeled, unmarked. Glass popped it into the player. The screen flickered to life. It showed Lily, maybe 10 years old, curled up under blankets in the hidden room. And beside her, a figure lay motionless. Rosie. But then, movement. Lily stirred, climbed to her knees, crawled to the vent. She pressed her hands to it. She whispered, "I'll find the door." And then the camera slowly tilted upward toward a sliver of ceiling light. Rosie had filmed it. Her final gift, proof of Lily's will to survive. Ellen Glass had solved murders before. She had tracked serial killers, exposed cover-ups, cracked cold cases left in moldy cardboard boxes for decades. But this was different. Rosie's story wasn't just about one broken family or one hidden room. It was about how many people looked away. As the investigation deepened, the fallout widened. Ellen realized the Harlan family had succeeded not because they were cunning, but because the system let them. And now, she intended to dismantle that system, piece by piece. The staff who knew over 40 interviews were conducted with former Michigan Child Protective Service workers, local officers, and school officials from the 1980s and early 90s. At least 6 admitted to either. Filing incomplete reports. Ignoring warning signs, trusting Walter Harlan's good standing in the church and Community One. Marjorie Neely, now in her late 70s, broke down during questioning. I remember seeing bruises on the oldest girl, Sarah. I thought maybe it was just a strict household. I should have asked more. I should have fought harder. Ellen stared her down. But you didn't. Marjorie wept. Number I didn't. And now those children are bones in the dirt. The foster system loophole state investigators found glaring gaps in the foster care pipeline that allowed Walter and Ann Harlan to house children like David DJ, the earliest known victim, without proper documentation. Old records showed that in 1971, a fire destroyed a state archive warehouse. Dozens of adoption and foster files were lost. Several children were then placed informally with families by overwhelmed caseworkers. Walter Harlan had personally signed for DJ, but no follow-ups were ever made. No school records, no medical history, not a single welfare check after 1973. It was as if David had vanished the moment he entered the house. The Financial Trail Glass requested all available tax and donation records connected to the Harlan's Church, Second Elm Pentecostal, a tight-knit but powerful congregation in Kalamazoo's rural belt. The church had shut down in 2002 after a fraud scandal, but its old records were archived. That's when she found it. From 1977 to 1988, monthly payments of $300 to $500 were made to the Harlan family from a fund labeled Special Youth Placement Assistance. The checks were signed by Pastor Gerald Rusk, a fiery preacher who had died in 1995. His sermons, stored on VHS, were riddled with apocalyptic warnings about purifying the next generation. He had been funneling church money to families like the Harlans, under the guise of home sanctification. Glass murmured aloud, they weren't just hiding these kids, they thought they were saving them. A cult or a cover? A psychological profiler working with Ellen posed a theory. The Harlans may not have acted alone. Their actions, isolating children, brainwashing through fear and obedience, cutting off outside contact, were cult-like. But there had never been enough members or outside structure to call it an official cult. Still, Ellen began mapping connections. Another family in Ohio, connected to the same church, had 3 adopted children vanish from their records. A nurse in Indiana claimed she once treated a mute little red-headed girl, brought in under a fake name, around 1988. A retired mail carrier remembered delivering dozens of unmarked envelopes from the church to special households. Could it be that what happened in the Harlan house was part of a broader system of hidden placements? A pipeline that took vulnerable, orphaned, or unwanted children and assigned them to families under religious cover. It was impossible to prove fully. But there were too many shadows to ignore. Gregory's final letter. In prison, Gregory Harlan began writing letters, not to the court, not to the media, but to Lily. With her permission, Ellen read one aloud to her during a supervised session. "Dear Lily, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know, Rosie loved you more than anyone I've ever seen love anything. She gave up everything to protect you. I tried to help. I didn't do enough, but she never gave up. You are the proof that she won. If the world ever tells you you're broken, tell it this. A girl raised in darkness still found the light. You are the light, Lily. I'm so sorry. Greg." Lily didn't cry. She simply asked Ellen, "Can I write back?" It was the first time she'd initiated anything on her own. Public reckoning. By mid-2024, the case was national news again. A wave of lawsuits followed. Former social workers were subpoenaed. The state of Michigan faced a class action lawsuit from victims of foster care abuse. The church's former trustees were investigated for financial conspiracy. Survivors from other placement families came forward, many of them bearing similar stories of hidden rooms, isolation, and spiritual abuse. One woman, now 52, stood before a press podium and said, "I thought I was the only one. But Rosie's story showed me I wasn't crazy. I was just hidden." The Sunlight Foundation Lily, now in therapy full-time and working with a ghostwriter, launched the Sunlight Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to investigating failed placements, forgotten foster children, and unregulated home adoptions. Its motto, "No child left unnamed." The foundation quickly uncovered 3 more children missing from state records between 1970 and 1990, all from Michigan, all with ties to closed churches. One girl, Angela M., was found alive in 2025, living under a false name in northern Wisconsin. She remembered Rosie. "She gave me her last cookie," Angela whispered in a recorded interview. "She said I'd get out. I didn't believe her." Angela escaped in 1985 by crawling through a coal chute during a thunderstorm. Her story was buried for decades. Now she too would be heard. Echoes, the Harlan farmhouse, was gone, but a 3D model, built for evidence, was displayed at the Michigan Museum of Justice. Visitors could walk through the virtual recreation of Rosie's room, the attic, and even the tunnel Lily used to escape. At the end of the exhibit, guests stood before a wall of names. David DJ, Maya Carter, Timothy Lasker, Angela White, Emily Stanton, Rosie Harlan. And now, Angela M., one plaque read, "They were hidden, but not forgotten." And next to it, a small note in Rosie's handwriting, preserved from her diary. "If you find this, tell them I was real." Despite the mounting evidence, growing media frenzy, and national outrage, one part of the Harlan story remained elusive. What happened in the final weeks before Rosie died? The diaries ended abruptly. The tapes grew fewer, and Rosie's remains, while found, gave little forensic insight beyond severe malnutrition and bone deterioration. So much of her life had been documented in whispers, faint singing, scribbled lines. memories sealed behind drywall. But the last days were shadows. Until a janitor from the courthouse made a discovery. The black box in a dusty supply closet beneath the Kalamazoo County Archives building, behind a false wall panel, a maintenance worker named Ron Holloway found a locked briefcase. It had no label, no key. He almost threw it away until he shook it and heard something rattle inside. The sheriff's department took possession and cracked it open. Inside was a digital high-8 camcorder. Along with it, one final tape labeled 1991 RH Do Not Destroy. Rosie's final film. The video was grainy and the battery almost dead. But when Glass viewed it, in a sealed room with no reporters, no agents, no noise, the entire course of the investigation changed. Rosie had recorded herself, not secretly, not hurriedly, but deliberately. She sat on the bed, the same bed where her bones would later be found. She was thinner than before. Her hair hung limp over her shoulders. Her lips were cracked, but her eyes still defiant, still alive. If you're watching this, I guess you found me, or what's left of me. She coughed. This is my truth. No lies, no whispers, just me. The confession. Rosie spoke slowly, clearly. She began by naming every child she remembered, one by one. David, Maya, Timothy, Angela, Emily, Lily. She told their stories as best she could, how each came into the house, what they were like, and how they suffered. Then she spoke about Sarah. Sarah said we were sinners, that God wanted us broken. She said pain was how we paid for being born. I tried to protect them, I really did, but I wasn't strong enough. Except for Lily. She smiled weakly. She still believes in stars. The turning point. Then Rosie said something Glass hadn't expected. I lied to Sarah. She thought I was dying faster than I was, so I faked the shaking, the coughing. I made my voice hoarse. I wanted her to stop watching so closely. And it worked. Sarah stopped feeding Rosie, thought she was near death, shifted her attention. Rosie used that time to coach Lily. I told her how to find the tunnel behind the dresser. I told her to listen for wind. I told her not to cry, no matter what. And then I told her something I never said out loud before. She looked into the camera. I loved her. The last goodbye. The tape ended with Rosie placing the camera on the floor and walking slowly to the wall. There she wrote a final message in chalk. Tell the truth. Don't look away. Not this time. Then she lay down, not in defeat, in peace. The hidden file. Also inside the briefcase was a USB drive. It contained scanned documents, files Glass recognized immediately as internal police memos from 1983. One in particular made her go cold. 2. Deputy Charles Lenning from Sergeant Howard Ellison. You are to drop the Harlan follow-up. They've got eyes on the board. And the Reverend says it's a sacred matter. Burn the notes. This stays buried. So it had been systemic. The silencing wasn't lazy. It was intentional. Lily's voice. When Lily was shown the final tape, she didn't cry. She placed her hand on the screen and whispered. She didn't say goodbye. She said, tell the truth. It was the longest sentence she'd spoken all year. With her therapist, she began recording audio journals, not to remember, but to testify. She gave permission for one of them to be played at Sarah Harlan's trial. The trial. In the summer of 2025, Sarah Harlan stood before the court, pale, gaunt, her white hair pinned up like a shell of her former self. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Dozens of witnesses testified. The tapes were played. The dollhouse was presented. The room was reconstructed in photos. And then the jury heard Lily's recording. Her voice, still childlike, described the walls, the hunger, the lullabies, and Rosie's final days. When the recording ended, silence filled the courtroom. Even the bailiff cried. The verdict, on September 2nd, 2025, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts. Sarah was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without parole. She showed no emotion, but as she was led away, she turned back and muttered one word: unclean. Ellen Glass turned her back on her. She had no interest in monsters clinging to false faith. The Legacy Grows Rosie's final message, "Don't look away," became a rallying cry. It was printed on t-shirts, murals, protest signs, advocacy handbooks. The Sunlight Foundation saw a 300% increase in volunteer investigators. And Lily? She spoke at a Children's Justice Summit in Chicago. Her final words: "I was raised in darkness, but darkness didn't raise me. Rosie did." By fall of 2025, the legal battle had ended. Sarah Harlan was imprisoned. The Harlan name, once shielded by community reverence, had become synonymous with generational evil. Rosie's story had made global headlines, inspiring reform, investigations, and a reckoning. But Detective Ellen Glass couldn't rest. Something still gnawed at her. There was a name Rosie mentioned in her diary: Maya. A girl said to have lived in the house only a few months, yet there were no records, no body, no clue where she had gone. All the other children's remains had been accounted for, except hers. The hint in the garden. One day, while reviewing the digital model of the farmhouse for a museum exhibit, Glass noticed something strange, a discrepancy in the satellite imagery from 1984 compared to more recent drone footage. A cluster of trees that had been alive in the 1980s, just behind the old barn, had all died off by the late 2000s. Arborists had speculated about blight or drought, but Glass saw a pattern. The trees had formed a perfect circle, a ring of rot. The orchard that wasn't she assembled a team and returned to the Harlan property, now state-owned and sealed for preservation. They brought cadaver dogs. One dog stopped, then another, at the base of a twisted apple tree. Digging began immediately. Within a few hours, they hit wood, and beneath that, bones. Maya had been buried standing upright, wrapped in a floral bedsheet, arms folded over her chest. Her skull was cracked. The most chilling detail? She was holding something in her hands, a photo of Sarah as a teenager, with the words, "You promised," scribbled in red crayon on the back. The forgotten girl Maya Carter had been removed from her mother's custody in 1982 following reports of abuse. She'd been placed in emergency housing, paperwork incomplete, and then lost. Her birth mother died by overdose in 1984. There was no one left to look for her. Rosie had written about her once. Maya smiled even when it hurt. She said Sarah was her angel. I told her angels don't lock doors. And now, Maya was found, 43 years too late. Her body was exhumed with care and buried next to Rosie in a new memorial garden behind the museum. Visitors left paper sunflowers at her headstone. The anonymous envelope weeks later, Glass received an envelope, no return address. Inside was a photograph, a group of children sitting on a worn wooden floor. At the center was Rosie, holding a younger Lily. Maya stood behind them. David crouched at the side. The photo was decades old. On the back, a handwritten message. There were more. Glass's heart pounded. She called in every archivist, digital forensic analyst, and photographic expert she knew. Together, they enhanced the photo. In the background, half-shadowed, stood 2 other children, a boy and a girl. Unnamed, unknown. Glass had never seen them before. A secret network? She reviewed all state placements from 1975 to 1985. Cross-referenced every missing child with ties to religious foster homes or unlicensed adoptions. She searched through closed churches and defunct youth programs. The trail led her to a small, abandoned church in western Pennsylvania. There, in the rubble of a collapsed prayer hall, she found something horrifying. A wooden chest identical to the one David had been buried in. Inside, a child's dress, a lock of red hair, and a photograph. Rosie again. But this time, she was not in the Harlan house. This wasn't a single house of horrors. It was a network. The reopened files, by winter of 2025, over 19 cold cases from Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania were reopened. Children who had run away, records mysteriously lost, families told to move on. Rosie's story had cracked open a regional conspiracy of forgotten children, taken under the guise of morality and faith, hidden from the world, and in some cases, discarded. The Sunlight Foundation expanded overnight. A new division, the Orchard Task Force, was formed, led by Glass. Their mission: trace every shred of documentation tied to the rogue child placement network, believed to have operated from 1971 to 1993, and they had a new lead: the man in the photograph. In the newly discovered photo, just barely visible in the background, stood an adult figure, male, wearing a long coat, hand on Rosie's shoulder. Digital enhancement revealed his face. He wasn't Walter Harlan. He wasn't Pastor Rusk. He was unknown, a stranger. And yet, when Glass ran facial recognition through old DMV and security archives, one hit came up: Reverend Paul Myers, a former pastor of a Pentecostal branch shut down in 1994 after suspected tax fraud. He had vanished, never arrested, never found, until now. The hunt begins. The FBI joined the investigation in early 2026. They dubbed it Operation Hidden Choir, targeting the suspected underground child relocation network, disguised as spiritual sanctuaries. Glass was appointed special consultant. Lily gave permission to share portions of her story for the nationwide campaign. At a press conference, Glass spoke with a trembling voice. "We thought this case ended at the Harlan house. We were wrong. It didn't end there. It began there. A candle for Rosie. Back in Kalamazoo, people left candles along the fence line where the Harlan house once stood. Children wrote Rosie letters. One note, written in a child's crayon, read, 'Dear Rosie, I wish you were my sister. Thank you for saving Lily. Thank you for being brave. I love you.' Glass read it and tucked it into her notebook. Some cases never leave you, and some names you carry forever."